Shitty hallways, only $1, split it 4 ways. Credit in the store, needles on the floor. If I had one wish, I wish for more. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of How to Beat the Streets podcast. Oh man, now today I got a special brother in the building, man. I'm so grateful to have this brother next to me, man. We're going to drop a lot of gems. Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about culture. And we're going to get into a little bit of his story, you know, and he's going to share a lot of amazing things that he got going on, man. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for SHIVY in the building.
Hello.
You got to drop that bomb, matter of fact. Yeah, you got to drop that bomb for the kid. How you feeling today, brother?
Man, I'm blessed to be able to wake up today and then honored to be able to share space with you, man.
I appreciate that, man.
Incredible dude, man. So I'm happy to be able to have some fellowship.
Thank you. Now, here on the show, How to Beat the Streets, we always get started with a quote. The quote we got for you today is, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure." What's that quote mean to you?
Recently about resiliency, and someone asked me, "Is resiliency a trait or a choice?" And I think when we look at pain, how we respond to pain is almost always a choice. And it is very easy for many of us who experience pain and kind of surrender to it and live in it and live in the trauma in it, even past the event.
Right.
And what I've been very intentional about in my life is that anytime I have moments of pain or of disappointment or shortcoming, I use that as the fuel to create purpose and intentionality for how I move forward. So I see pain as an opportunity to make great choices.
And I definitely appreciate hearing that, because even like someone like me, like my father got shot and killed when I was 8 years old. Yeah. And, you know, just hearing that, you know, as a young guy, you know, coming up and, you know, going from seeing your father, you know, every weekend or, you know, every couple of days to not seeing him at all, and then learning about the violent crime and then actually seeing what the streets are, you know, living in the projects for a little while, it kind of opened my eyes up to why a lot of young men start to make those left turns and start getting into a lot of those things. And for me, I could have very much been another one of those type of guys. Right. But instead of, you know, using that pain and just becoming of it, I use that to get to all the way where I am now, like helping kids, teaching, and doing music and stuff like that. So
would you agree that that was a choice?
Definitely.
So then the question is, what was the what behind why you made that choice?
Just knowing that I had to break those generational curses. Like even my grandfather, like I'm sitting here, my cousin in the building right now, and his mother and my father's brother and sister, and my grandfather spent over 20 years in prison. And he came home and, you know, he was trying to build with his son, which is my father. And at that party where my grandfather was being celebrated for coming home, my father actually was shot and killed in that party. And my grandfather was trying to tell him, like, yo, you need to leave here, man. Like, come with me. But my grandfather couldn't stay because he was on parole. So he couldn't be in that environment. So he tried to tell my father to come with him. And my father didn't leave. And then, you know, his untimely demise happened. So for me, even my older brother end up, you know, going to Rikers Island, getting locked up back and forth. And then the next son in line was me. So I had to really look at the whole, you know, pathway of my grandfather, then my father, then my brother, and now it's me. Yeah. So by the time it got to me, I already knew, you know, how to beat the streets. Right. I knew I couldn't do that. You know, I had to do something different.
Right.
So.
Right. Why do you think sometimes brothers feel like they don't have a choice? Right, so like we use the terminology often that we are products of our environment,
right? As
if like the outcome is already destined. Why do some of us give into that, and what do we need to impart in our young people so that they actually see a choice in it?
I think, you know, we only be what we could see. So it's like if I grow up, you know, seeing all of these things, then I'd start to think like, okay, this is just how it is. But if we actually use the reverse psychology of it and say, okay, if this is all I see, I have to be something else. And that's all I did. I'm like, okay, everybody's going, you know, to jail. Everybody getting locked up. Everybody using their pain and, you know, turning that into being a tough guy and just not even going to college, something like that. Like where I grew up, it wasn't a lot of college graduates. So I'm like, oh, let me just do everything that I see people not doing and just see how that works out for me.
Yeah.
And that was it. Like even as a teacher, like I was a criminal justice major and I had a 99 on the state trooper exam. So I was actually about to be a state trooper and that was my plan. But this program, Teach for America, shout out to Teach for America, was like tabling at my school. And I was like, you know what, let me go ahead and go on this interview. And I went, and for me, it was like, they was explaining, the lack of black males in the classroom and all of that. And I'm like, matter of fact, it was the same theory. Like if a lot of black men are not becoming teachers, how about I become a teacher?
Right.
And just see how that works for me. In the law enforcement field, it wasn't that same statistic. So I'm like, okay, let me go over here where it seems like no one is doing this, and let's see what happens. And it took me all the way to sitting here with you. So it's been great.
How do you? What year are you in teaching now?
I just concluded my 9th year this year.
So there's a come on.
Gotta clap it up for
Pressing
that.
buttons for that.
That's 9 years.
It's a lot of folks that come through the Teach for America program,
Right.
that don't stay.
Yeah.
Right. And that's always been like, the knock that I'm always hearing in the teacher community, like, oh, here they go, them T4A folk. Right.
I know why though.
They come in, they got the perks on the other side of that timeline. They get to that place, and then they move on to go do something else. What has been the why for why you have stayed committed to the field and kind of broken with what many consider to be the stereotype of Teach for America educators?
I seen what was happening, like when they told me in my interview there was a lack of black male educators, they did not lie. Like when I stepped into my first school building as a first year teacher, everybody's saying, your first year is going to be the worst year ever. This is going to be the most challenging, blah, blah, blah. And I got in there and man, I was having a ball.
Like, this is wavy. What you talking about?
Even when the check came in, I'm like, they going to pay me for this?
Yeah.
It felt like
I get to hang out with kids all day and get
like
a
an
bag?
after school program. And, the most challenging kids, started to like really, fall in love with me. Like, I need this guy to be here every day. Yeah. And then I feel like that's when the passion grabbed me. Like I said, my plan was something different. Yeah. I feel like this was God's plan for me. Like, I'm going to use you because 1, growing up in the streets. 2, my father being killed. 3, all of the people that I grew up around that, fell to mass incarceration. Mm-hmm. So like I had so much in me that when I started to see those young boys in the classroom acting up, my first school I was working in Coney Island in the projects in Brooklyn. So it was like, but none of that stuff they could try with me because I'm like, you're not gonna tell me you can't do challenging work. Right. You're not gonna tell me you can't overcome your whatever's going on in your life, you know what I mean?
Right.
You're not going to tell me you can't keep your emotions intact because I was able to do it.
Right.
And then I'm also like, you can't tell me school don't work because look at my life. I'm just a whole, poster child of what education could do for you. Mm-hmm. So now it's no excuses when you with me. Right. But also, administration, you're not going to tell me I can't play music. You're not going to tell me I can't dress how I want to dress. Matter of fact, you're not going to tell me that when you come into the room and observe me that I got to change up and, I'm going to be who I'm going to be. Because for me, it's like I understood early on that I had a purpose here. Yeah. And then once I let them know that, they get out the way all the time. So I never had a tough year.
For a lot of educators, it seems as if education has become like the like minimum wage for college educated adults.
Yep.
Right. like, hey, I can't get another job. I'm gonna go teach.
Yeah.
Right. And then some folks they'll step into the classroom and then they'll be there until they get a new opportunity or something that's gonna pay better or do better. If you and I ain't counting pockets, but let's say you're in a position to be financially free, financially able to choose to do whatever you want to, right? Would you stay?
Woo, that's a good question. Honestly, I would probably move on, but I'm gonna take education with me wherever I go. Like even podcasts, like the real reason I wanted to start a podcast because I felt like one day I will have an opportunity to expand and grow and move on. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to start this podcast to always remind me, like never forget to educate everybody. Yeah. So this whole show is just about bringing people up here who was able to overcome rough circumstances. Yeah. It's the streets, but it's not just the streets. I've had people up here who, you know, they didn't grow up in the projects, but they might have lost their mom, they might have lost their dad, so they went through that, but they overcame that situation.
Right.
So this podcast is just a form of education for me. Like, no matter what, I want to always be able to educate. So I will take that opportunity because I'm the one in my family that has to, like, you know, show everyone, like, you can do this at a large scale.
Yeah.
Like right now, you know, I did the bachelor's, the master's, you know, the career. I'm doing great for myself. But now, you know, my family looking at me like, but can you make it?
Right.
Like,
I ain't gonna cap to you, man. I think as someone who's been able to like flourish in the edutainment, teacherpreneur,
your name definitely pops up.
Teachergram
every time
in the space to be able to like to have done well. I think the biggest challenge for me has been staying in the classroom while being you know, very successful outside of the classroom. I can definitely see why it's so easy for many folks to like say, you know what, I'm gonna claim my time back so that I can focus on the things that are giving me next level promise.
right.
But to your point, I think about like how many of these kids, especially, you know, we serve in communities that really need us, right? Like we ain't serving in, you know, I work at Charles Drew High School in Riverdale, Georgia.
Salute.
My district is 100% Title I, right? So that kind of lets you know the energy, right? Average income is like 21,000 or something like that out there.
So what you doing is needed.
What we're doing is needed. And so then, you know, I think kind of always playing that balance of like, how much money do you need? Right? How much ease or luxury do you need? And what is the real currency in life?
Right.
What's really paying you?
And honestly, that's what I'm battling every day. You know, next year will be my 10th year in education, and as you can imagine, my LinkedIn is jumping right now. You know, assistant principal programs, principal programs, dean opportunities, founding school opportunities. Like, so I'm looking at this like, wow, it's like, you know, that time is approaching. Well, I'm gonna soon have to figure out
why not.
What do I want to do?
Correct.
You know, but even like my last school that I worked in, I left my last school to work here. And they still reach out to me. Like, those kids are still like, man, it's been like 3 years. And those kids are still like, you coming back? I'm like, damn, man. But
you see me over here.
But I know why, because it's just like, basically, when they ask me, am I coming back, they're telling me that space haven't been filled. You know what I mean? Like, you left and no one came and brought the same sauce
and
that you had.
Be.
And it won't be. And that's the sad part.
Some of us are unicorns.
And that's what it is.
Like, it's just some, like, sometimes you really are that special. I think the thing is, our responsibility then becomes, how can we touch more? Right. It becomes about how can we grow impact? How can we do more? Like, how can we now coach up more young men to walk in the classroom the same way that we do, so that we don't continue to be an anomaly or a standout.
Right. And I think that's also what, like, books and stuff, like my cousin Aquel always talked to me about, you know, getting a book out. Because it's like, these are just, it's not, I don't have to just stay, you know, in the classroom. Like I said, I started with the podcast, and now, you know, next is going to be the book. Because it's like, I'm going to continue to, you know, educate in any way I can. But for the question of the day, we have, as Father Day approaches, I wanted to know, what does it take to break generational curses and lead in a way our sons don't fall victim to the streets?
Stay present and unlearn every day.
What you mean when you say unlearn every day?
As black folks in America, especially as black men, black fathers, we have experienced generational traumas, racial traumas, psychological traumas, lived experience traumas that cause us sometimes to show up in ways. We have normalized unhealthy ways to show up or be. And that, to me, is like where our work is right now. It is in, you know, for example, like my father. I've seen my father kiss someone on the forehead 2 times in my life. And each time, that person was in a casket.
Wow.
Right? And so what unlearning looks like for me is saying that my sons, both my late son and my baby boy Christian, who's 7 now. Bryce and Christian know what it feels like to experience intimacy from their father. They don't have to wait to be in a casket to get kissed on the forehead, right? So like every morning when my son wakes up, I'm like, yo, you got to pay the rent. I kiss him on the forehead, he kissed me on my forehead, right? And that's how we start the day every single day to normalize something that, like, unfortunately in our community we don't see enough of, right? Like think of how many of our black boys don't get hugged, don't get told they're loved, don't get handled, with a soft touch, right? And that is normalized in our community. It's why we walk with the mean mug. It's why we carry ourselves in a certain kind of way, because we're like conditioned to be that. And those are the type of things that we have to unlearn.
And I definitely, I just had my son. My son is 6 months right now. And I've been off for the last couple of weeks, for the New York State paid family leave. And I had this great opportunity to just be day to day with my son every single day. And like, my wife is the one working and I'm really at home with him every day. And I'm like, wow, this is beautiful, especially for a guy like me who didn't grow up with a father. I'm definitely an example of that. Like, I mean, I remember some things with my father, but he was always tough too. Yeah. Like, he was a 5%er. He always, was into karate and Bruce Lee and all that.
I feel like we had the same dad.
Yeah.
Okay, my dad was in the Nation. He was a Black Panther. Yep. He was, you know what I'm saying?
So it was more that tough love. So
my dad used to slap lotion on me. Like, you didn't put lotion on with some titty. It was like, plap, 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 plap.
Yep. So as I got older, I realized, like, I couldn't, I always struggled to build with other guys, you know what I mean? Like, even, like, sometimes my cousin would be like, yo, man, Mr. Brown is a cool guy. You don't be, like, talking to him all the time. And it's like, I be trying to tell him, like, it's hard for me to be like, yo, you want to kick it?
Because you don't see it. You ain't
get some lunch or something. Like, it's like, I don't really, even with my grandfather sometimes, my grandfather, like, try to hug me, and I'd be like, yo, what you doing, man? But I joke it off.
Yeah.
But hearing what you just said made me realize, like, I've been like that my whole life. Like, when it comes down to men, like, it's like, you know what I mean? Hold on. Or like, hey, yo, I'm from New York. So it's like, yo, pause, man, what you doing?
Yeah, but my son, that's that stuff that's what we gotta break free of. That's why, like, yo, when I get off the line with any of my bros, like Ra, you know what I'm saying? I say I love you. Not be safe, not be careful, not holler at you, not later. You know what I'm saying? I love you. You know what I'm saying? When I see my bros, it's a quick dap and a real hug, right? Because how many of us are torn down every single day by the world? You know what I'm saying? How many of us are pushed away more than we are embraced on a daily basis?
A lot.
You know? And I think we deserve to receive more love, more nurture, but we also have a responsibility to provide more love and more nurture.
And they say, like, a man is supposed to protect and provide, but, like, in the community, I notice a lot of men don't have it to be able to provide. So I feel like that adds to why it's like so much dysfunction when it comes down to manhood, because so many men, if I'm a man by being able to provide, but I can't get the 6-figure job, I can't, have the business and, scale it to a point where I can take care of my whole family, then am I not a man? Because I can't protect and provide?
Right. And I think, but again, that goes back to, like, our need to unlearn. Right. So I've heard you, I've had the opportunity to be around you on 2 different occasions. And each time I've heard you talk about your father and his untimely transition. But I've never heard you talk about the home he lived in, the shoes he wore, the clothes he wore, the watch he wore, the car he drove, the businesses he had, the jobs he had. You don't discuss any of those things. And I'm bringing this up to say we place so much value on externalities, so much value on things about us but not us while we're living. But when you die, as we all do, it won't matter. None of it will be a part of the conversation.
That's true.
And I think if we have a healthier understanding of, like, yo, when it's your day, when people are eulogizing you, will they talk about any of that?
Probably not.
So why are we putting so much value on it now?
Right. It's true.
Why do we move in a way where we change how we show up for the world for the proximity to something that's not even real, money?
Wow. And that's why, I might title this episode "The Unlearning" with Shivy because,
Hey,
you know what I mean.
You might have gave me my book title.
Ooh, The Unlearning.
Ooh.
Here go right here, live on How to Beat the Streets.
Yes, sir.
Now, I did, wanted to, do a quick moment of silence, for your son. I've been reading up, following your stories, and just, I was very impacted by that, especially while I'm, going through being a father, to my son right now. So we can do a quick moment of silence. Respect. Now, just wanted to know, like, what makes Bryce a hero?
Yeah. Wow. Bryce is one of those kids, like, very much like us. We grew up with fathers who were very aware of what they mean and what we mean as black men to our community and our villages. But Bryce lived as such like a selfless person and like a glue person. In his passing, I've gotten the opportunity to hear from so many like kids who I did not know who went to school with him or things like that. And I just always constantly heard about my son being a person that stood up for the person being outcasted.
Wow.
Was always the includer. Was always that bridge person, had no enemies, who really did the one thing I think that as friends is the most you could ever ask of someone, and that's just be there.
Wow. How did you like raise that?
I didn't know I did.
But see,
I didn't know I did.
That's one thing I wanted to highlight because I was reading, a lot of the things that you was posting, and that was the main question I wanted to ask you, like, especially, with Father's Day approaching, how do you raise a son to be that way? Because you did do some stuff. You probably didn't know he was doing it, just, going through the motions, but I know it's maybe 2 to 3 things you could share with us that you done to make him, be that way.
It's as simple as kids don't do what you say, they do what they see.
There you go.
Right? Like if my son grew up watching us fill up the back of the car with feminine hygiene kits and food and water, and then go to downtown Atlanta and feed folks on weekends, right? My son
Gems
was there when after the untimely demise of George Floyd, and we started marching in Atlanta, being on the front lines. He was there. In all of the things that I lived and I experienced, I brought my son there to live and experience as well. So he understood the greater responsibility to our village. And that was the thing that was always imparted in him. And that's why, while I'm very frustrated with my son, at my core, as to why would you would catch yourself asking, why would you sacrifice yourself this way? Why would you? And for those that don't know, my son's name is Bryce Brooks. He went on this spring break on April 6th, went to a beach in Florida with some of our family friends and some of his friends, and saw 4 younger black kids getting pulled out into the ocean by a riptide, and decided that he would jump in to try to retrieve those kids. So he and 2 of his friends hopped in the water and were able to draw the attention of folks on the coast to get those other kids taken, but brought back in. But my son, unfortunately, was pulled away and went under. And a family friend of mine, his name is Charles Chuck Johnson, jumped in to try to get my son, and he too passed.
Wow.
So in this instance, I had to grapple with not only losing my son, but losing a friend. And then 2, had to grapple with being extremely proud of my son for being selfless, being heroic, stepping up in a way that, you raised them to. But then dealing with the consequence and the price of what it takes to be a hero.
Man, my heart goes out to you, my condolences. I know that's that's heavyweight stuff to, experience. How do you, continue to push forward? Like I see you on social media, even here right now, still doing what you need to do, for your brand and, for your own peace. How do you continue to keep pushing? with a positive mindset, because that's key.
Faith is it's a couple things that we got to understand, that like, yo, in life, people are not yours to have, they're yours to cherish. So when we experience somebody transitioning at a time we believe it ain't supposed to happen, right? We believe it. We center ourselves. How you gonna take them from me? How you gonna do this to me? That's my daddy. That's my son. That's my wife. That's my mom. That's my grandma. How you gonna take them from me? That's my boy. That's my friend. How you gonna take them from me?
Right.
But we are not ours to have.
And that's big to even understand, you know. And I hope everybody out there listening, because I feel like, you know, it takes a level of maturity to even like understand that, you know.
But it's in, yo, for those of us who subscribe to the Christian faith or whatever faith, and especially those faiths that believe in an afterlife, do you believe it or not? Do you believe it or not? In your mind, if one of your friends hit the freaking jackpot and got $2 billion, right? Would you be saying, yo, they just got $2 billion and moved out the neighborhood. Oh man, their life is horrible. Oh my God, why would you do that to them? We wouldn't say that, right? So if we know that a person is grounded and it is a believer, and then they transition, how could you not then instead be excited for that person, excited for that spirit, that soul, because that soul is now experiencing something way beyond this BS that we down here dealing with right now.
Right.
Like, do you believe or not? And so for those people who like really center themselves and kind of believing like that's the game, it's over with, I really question them to look inside and ask yourself, do you believe?
Do you believe? That's a good question.
Do you?
And that's a challenge, you know, that's a challenge to even have everybody. Yeah, should all, you know, everybody checking this out. Do you believe? That's a question that we all want to answer. Now, this part of the show is called a Putting You On segment. I love to ask all the guests that come through to just, you know, put us on with a book, movie, podcast, or anything that just helps you keep a positive mindset to keep you pushing and just, you know, going after whatever you know, deem as your goals.
Yeah. I mean, my put on to everybody is, choose healthy friends. I'll take a healthy friend over a book or a podcast.
That was a different,
or some self-proclaimed guru, right? When you have a circle of healthy friends, it provides for you the opportunity to be more introspective, to be authentic and vulnerable, to be honest, to strengthen your metacognition, thinking about your thinking as you're thinking. Choose healthier friends, man. That'll change the game for you, because your friends and your network and the people around you are the people who will multiply you more than anything else. A book could never do that for you. Gems,
ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we get out of here, if your life, you know, was a book or a movie, which I could see, you know, what would be the 3 key takeaways? Like after we all leave that movie theater, what are we gonna take away from, you know, watching the SHIVY story?
Serve others.
Serve others.
Love others.
Love others.
We are not ours to have.
Ooh, we are not ours to have. That's a dope movie right there, man. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna end with this. Right now, SHIVY is
present. And honored to be present, because a lot of people don't get the opportunity to be present today.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. How to Beat the Streets, featuring my brother, SHIVY.